Projected costs associated with school spending and the blueprint for Maryland's future are surging.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, in total, Maryland's 24 counties now owe billions more than previously estimated.
Maryland House of Delegate Republicans Matt Morgan,
everything we said 3 years ago that we couldn't afford the blueprint is coming true.
April Miller,
our counties can't afford it. The only way they can do it is to increase property taxes.
And Kathy Schlager,
they are actually building a plane while they fly it.
Are not surprised by what Project Baltimore just told them concerning how much money the blueprint for Maryland's future is now projected to cost taxpayers.
This is a self-inflicted problem.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill until it's typed?
The blueprint for Maryland's future passed in 2021. The law pumps billions of additional state and local tax dollars into public education every year. The blueprint, in part, increases teacher salaries, expands pre-K, and doubles teacher collaboration time. But now, new numbers released by the state are showing the blueprint will cost local jurisdictions far more money than previously projected. Take a look at these two charts. The first was released in 2022 by the Maryland Department of Legislative Services, DLS. It estimates how much money in the coming years the blueprint is projected to cost taxpayers in Maryland's 24 local jurisdictions. This second chart, released last month, represents DLS's updated projections. And when Project Baltimore compared the two, we learned the differences are significant. In 2022, for example, just 3 years ago, DLS estimated the blueprint would cost local jurisdictions a total of $7.5 billion during fiscal year 2025. But look at this. The current 2025 estimates now show it'll cost $8.2 billion. The projections were off by around $700 million. In 2026, initial projections estimated the blueprint would cost counties $7.7 billion. Now, the cost in 2026 is projected to be $8.4 billion. If we compare the differences in the projections over just the next 5 years, the blueprint will cost local taxpayers $3.7 billion more than the state previously estimated. That's a 9.5% increase. How did this happen?
I am not surprised at all that the estimates were low. I think that there was a movement to pass this bill and an excitement here that the people crunching the numbers were looking for the best case scenario they could find.
In an email, DLS told Fox 45 News the initial projections were inaccurate due to a combination of factors. First, over the last 3 years, local jurisdictions varied in how they funded education. Those differences affected the projections in subsequent years. Secondly, in 2022, Maryland's legislature passed a law shifting more of the funding burden for the blueprint from the state to the counties. And lastly, the blueprint significantly increases funding for schools with high concentrations of poverty. And in 2022, according to DLS, as a result of the COVID pandemic, the state underestimated the number of students who would be living in poverty.
Think about that for a second. The state is partially blaming the COVID pandemic for miscalculating the blueprint's costs. But the blueprint was passed during the pandemic. Lawmakers knew the projected cost estimates may not be accurate, but they passed it anyway. And now taxpayers have to pay for it. Now that we're getting a better understanding of how much the blueprint is going to cost, in hindsight, was it a mistake to pass the blueprint during the COVID pandemic?
No, certainly not. Look, there's no better time than now to make sure that we're investing in a world-class public education system here in Maryland.
Maryland State Senate President Bill Ferguson told Fox 45 News it's common for public budgeting projections to fluctuate because formulas and assumptions change over time.
We know that public education is critical.
I understand what you're saying, but the reality is taxpayers by law now have to pay $700 million more in just 1 year. That's a lot.
If we want to create a society and where everybody has the opportunity to truly thrive, we have to invest in our public education system to give children a chance to meet their potential.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
I'm Chris Pabst. Thanks for watching. Here's another story to watch. Also, if you have a story idea, please send us a message.